what is the key to solving fraud? It's attribution. You think about attribution, there's two simple questions, which is, did it work, and can you show me? You would think it'd be easier than it was to be able to address those two things. The individual who leads a team for Xaxis to answer those questions each and every day is Evan Hanlon. Evan is the Vice President of Strategy and Investment for the Americas. He also wears the title of the man with the coolest shoes. So please welcome Evan Hanlon.
Thanks, Brian. I'm really excited about being able to talk to the three individuals who are able to join us for this panel. Unlike last kind of panel, I think you'll find little controversy and a lot more collaboration. I really like all of your blazers. I'm glad that you were really able to coordinate. And so let's kind of hop right to it and introduce them. So first up is Ron Sarig. Ron Sarig is the CEO and co-founder of cross-channel marketing analytics platform Datorama. Prior to founding Datorama, Ron served as Vice President of Research and Development at MediaMind. He has 14 years of product engineering management and leadership experience and has managed over 130 engineers and product managers. Ron. Next up is Alex Saldahna. Alex is the CEO and co-founder of Abakus, and prior to Abakus, Alex served as the Chief Technology Officer of Exponential Interactive. He co-founded Cadence Berkeley Labs, a division of Cadence Design Systems, in '93. He then co-founded Softface in 1998, which was acquired by Ariba in 2004. Alex has a PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley and holds 12 patents. Alex? And last but certainly not least, Jason Harrison. Jason Harrison is the founding CEO of Game Theory and is responsible for articulating the vision, evangelizing the mission, and steering the company towards the attainment of clients' goals. A veteran of media agency, client tech, and consulting experience, Jason has a multilateral perspective on the industry that gives him unique insight into the data, tech, and analytics-related challenges faced by our clients. There's a long list of things that he's done before, which includes things like working client-side at Johnson & Johnson, being Global Chief Information Officer at Maxis and Universal McCann, et cetera, et cetera. And right now, Jason is based in Minneapolis, where he enjoys the long, cold winters. So, Jason. Great. So thanks, guys. So in the spirit of attribution, we stole the name of this panel from John Wanamaker, who apparently also invented Mother's Day, who allegedly said, half the money I spent on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. So with the spirit of that in mind, Alex, let's start with you. What is advanced digital attribution, and why is it so important, especially today?
Yeah, so I'd like to start by saying that marketing has evolved. We've seen ads actually sent to the edge of space. We've seen ads on astronauts' suits actually in space. And marketing is very complex. You've got all these channels, you've got creativity, and so marketers are doing a fantastic job at marketing. But they're being held back. And why are they being held back? Because of the measurement. The measurement is inaccurate, and it's sometimes using what we call weighted models. The second concern there with the measurement is that it's often done by humans, it's done by a consultant who's not really explaining their results. And finally, measurement is using a lot of A/B testing all the time to try to find out what's working, what's not working. So advanced attribution is really needed to solve for this waste of time that marketers, is causing marketers to waste billions of dollars going after measurement. So good attribution, advanced attribution can solve for that, make marketing easy.
Jason, so game theory's entire kind of idea is around marketing effectiveness, and you're looking at it from both a kind of macro all the way to a micro all the way to a macro level. How does digital attribution sort of play into the conversations that you're ultimately having with clients going out there right now?
Yeah, so I own 0 patents. Just we'll start there as a starting point. I think in listening to Alex describe the situation, it does to realize that what marketers are grappling with today is a vast sea of complexity in the tactics they're employing, the kinds of data that they actually need to collect, the kind of measurement that needs to be done. What we see in talking to our clients over and over again is just challenges in identifying the right sets of data, the right measurement to approach, fragmentation within their own organization, silos. So I think, two things. One, the problem they're trying to solve is incredibly complicated. Marketing is incredibly complicated. It's moving incredibly fast. And two, I think advertisers, many of them are still trying to work out how to set themselves up internally to be able to work with the kinds of capabilities that these guys will bring to the table. So a lot of what we do in our conversations is kind of starting there, having a clear understanding of the problem that they're trying to solve, and then working through some of those complexities and trying to simplify it.
Great, and I'd love to hear also kind of building on that from Alex and Ron, so I think you're right? There's a consensus that in general we aren't measuring value correctly. It's a really complex problem. What exactly in each of your minds is taking so long to help change that, both from a kind of the most technical perspective, but also even from just being able to understand it visually?
So I would really argue that if you be able to understand what is it that drove the demand, what is it that out of your marketing activities that was the most successful, stuff like what Abakus does, that's a big thing, right? But I would argue that kind of 80% of the way to go there is really about getting all the data, putting it together, cleaning it, making it work. So people have all this huge amount of data, but 85% of them are just stuck with what can we do with that? How can we mesh all of this data together? How can we give it to Abakus to get better attribution modeling? So this is really, for us, when we started, was really what we were focused in. How do we bring all of this data together? How we mesh all of those channels and really make it work? Next step is getting smart people to figure out the right attribution for all of that. So.
Yeah, so absolutely agree with data being very critical, access to data. But then there's actually three key things I would say that is holding up adoption of attribution today. The first thing is that by and large over the last 6-7 years, people have used a historical model-based approach where they look at past history as a predictor of current and future marketing. And that's a problem, because as soon as you've calculated one of those models, you've got to recalculate it because your marketing plan has changed. That's the first point. The second thing is people want to understand incrementality. What did marketing, what media elements help, what tactics help, what strategies help. And so they do a lot of A/B tests. And the problem with an A/B test is you're only testing one variable at a time. So that creates a lot of data for you to then try to absorb and figure out what's working, what's not working. And then the final thing is, attribution is in the service of optimization, in the service of marketing efficiency. So it really, out of attribution, if you don't get a clear, actionable result, your attribution is not that useful, no matter how much time you spend on it.
I actually think that's key, just to build on that point. The result of the analysis and the attribution might yield insights and stuff that's actionable. But whether or not that action actually makes its way to the people who are making the everyday decisions about allocation among tactics is a question. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with that. We see that too. So, programs and analytical programs that are set up that employ best-in-class capabilities have got to be done so in a way that links them to the everyday decisions, because that's where they're going to create value.
That makes a ton of sense. And so, kind of keeping that in mind, I think that this year, at least in the conversations that we're having with clients much more, it sort of feels like this is the time when a lot of clients are really realizing that this is possible, that they can change the way that they've been sort of looking at it. They can move beyond the kind of last touch, winner takes all models that we've had in the digital space before. That said, for all of the reasons that you've just described, and the reason that you hold so many patents, it's a really hard thing to even understand what to look for, right? Especially if it's something that's so foreign. So, all three of you have a really interesting kind of, I think, integrated, role in the ecosystem. And I'd love to hear from each of you, what should we be looking for when talking about attribution providers and talking about how to move into more advanced attribution techniques?
So I'll start and give you a perspective on a situation I've seen recently with a couple of clients where, advertisers in some cases for many years have had lots of really good capability around CRM and sort of direct strategies and understanding and building customer databases. And that part of the company and part of the marketing effort has been managed discrete to media and sort of the rest of marketing. And I think what we're starting to see now, and I think a lot of this is brought on by the fact that tech is making better connectivity possible between those two realms, is marketing organizations looking at and understanding the potential to use classic CRM tactics in deploying messaging at scale in media. And so that's something that we've seen. And again, to your point, the tech and really the data availability has only really happened in the last few years. And I think we're starting to see the light bulb go on for a lot of advertisers, and that's given rise to some really interesting conversations.
I would say that if, judging by our clients, looking at how clients choose attribution vendors and attribution partners, first and foremost, I would say that the biggest kind of condition would be someone who's willing to work with you and recognize the fact that there is no one truth. There is no one answer. You need to find a partner that will help you establish how your marketing efforts are best working for you as a business. There is no one answer. So that would be number one. Second, I would say that you're looking to find someone who can do that continuously. You can't, if you're analyzing, doing media mix modeling, doing attribution analysis, doing it once, it doesn't help you much. It helps you once. But you need to do that ongoing, and you need to have the infrastructure to really allow you to do that on an ongoing basis. So these are the top parameters, I think, that we see when clients.
Yeah, and I have a similar view. I think the first thing that you want in an attribution solution from your provider is a holistic solution that you can compute all the time. So it's almost available in real time. The second thing you want to do is you want your solution to be able to compute the incrementality. So really, when I refer to A/B tests, you'd like your attribution solution to figure out what's working when there's simultaneously a lot of different marketing activity happening. And how you handle external factors and so on is also very important. And the final piece is you've got to have an attribution results system that makes it actionable. To Jason's point, it should connect into your programmatic platform to do closed loop optimization. How do you devise that system? How do you allow sort of a marketing taxonomy so that a marketer can understand what's happening, but then you're automatically controlling what the programmatic optimization system is going to do, make adjustments based on the attribution. Those are the three key things.
And I think that's actually another bit of evolution that we've seen even in the conversations you and I have been having with clients, which is that classic approaches to cross-channel optimization and MMM and such typically have been done without regard to specific audiences. But that's now possible. And given sort of the data sets that we've got access to, not only can our analytic approach start to highlight and identify audiences, discrete audiences that are high value for a client, but we can also then go and obviously message against those audiences, measure performance, and repeat. And so I think that whole paradigm is now I'm starting to see that blow up a lot more.
Yeah, I agree, considering I have more and more conversations with you about it. So Alex, specifically, I guess to drill in a little bit deeper, since you do ultimately have a kind of end-to-end attribution platform, what are the type of conversations you're having with clients? One, not only about the value, but particularly what the value of, for example, Abakus has over other market leaders that are out there, and what do you find being the pain points and the key conversation elements that are arising in those conversations?
Yeah, so to Ron's earlier point, every client's different. So the first thing we do is we try to understand the client's business. And we suggest that one of the key things that the client does with our software is build a custom marketing taxonomy, which shows them all the way from the top level, the channel level, down to the placement keyword level, based on their strategies, whether it's upper funnel, lower funnel, whether they are looking at different sites, different providers, and so on, how to organize that, how to create that automatically. So that's one piece. The second piece is then to figure out what it is they're trying to solve. So we could have a single brand client, and they're focused on performance. They want to just increase sales. On the other hand, we could have a global company that has 9 different brands, and they want to understand the effect of marketing on one brand has on uplift on the revenue for the other brand. So you have to set these up in the software differently, and then the client can benefit from that. Now, our key differentiators from the competition is we are up and running with our platform in about a week to 2 weeks, because we take the data, we do some processing cleansing, but there are some requirements on it. And once that data is available, you can get results instantly and have those updated daily.
And how important, and Jason, I think this is for you as well. I mean, how important is the ability to actually explain the kind of process that's going on behind attribution, right? There's a lot of technical kind of terminology that gets thrown around about it, which can be very overwhelming. I find it overwhelming. And so, how critical is it that it's, one, understandable to both lay people, but two, powerful enough to actually, give you the results that you need?
So, I'll admit that when we started off, we used to explain the methodology. We parked that right now. We're interested in generating value to the client through the software and trying to make the user interface that we have easy and intuitive for a marketer, so that either the marketer can change the campaign strategy manually with the planner buyer approach, or they can benefit from the programmatic feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you that question. How often do you get into detailed methodological dialogue with your clients about the actual algorithm or approach that Abakus takes?
So usually only a small fraction now of our clients ask about the methodology, and it's usually out of interest, and it's usually late in the sales process. We no longer see that early on. And
it's probably growing as people become more comfortable with it. But I think those conversations tend to be really, really rooted in, what am I going to get for this? If I go through the pain of doing this, and for a lot of advertisers and marketers, again, we talked about just finding the data. They want to know, how much work is this going to be for me? Is the process easy? Can we do it quickly? Which I think you guys have solved for that. And I think those tend to be the questions that get asked. And at the end of this, what is the kind of insight I'm going to have? Can it be connected? Is the whole thing going to create value for me? Less so than, is this particular algorithm better than this one?
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me because, when you get down to it, attribution is really dealing with the truth, right? And the truth around value and what is it behind advertising that's actually motivating that value. And, the operative word, I think, not only for this session, but the one previously and for the two to follow, is really around transparency and getting a better understanding of what that looks like. To that end, Jason, you had actually brought this up earlier, and Ron, this question's for you. We know that the tech stack for marketers now is sort of infinitely complex and infinitely modular, and that also means an ever-growing number of data feeds, right? And that some that cooperate very nicely and some that sit in these silos. How do we get that under control, and how do we help sort of drive towards a much more transparent value around marketing activity?
So for me, the answer lies in the fact that people need to make peace with the fact that they can't control that. We live in a super dynamic world. The velocity just increases all the time. We get new data sources. If we're trying to get to a place in which we brought all of our data together and then we're at peace, we're good, that's not going to happen because that will stop innovation. We want to bring all of our data together. We see clients who are bringing as much as 450 different data sources for one brand. And that happens. And sometimes some of those data sources will disappear, some others will come along. What people need to be able to do is to cope with that on an ongoing basis. So it's not a one-off thing. This is something this is a capability that needs to be built into every modern marketing organization. I need to cope with a lot of different data sets. It's not just about the amount of data. So imagine, I can think of one client who deals with between 5 and 7 data streams per country. They're working across 18 different countries, and they still want to control and have transparency into everything that they do. How do they do that on an ongoing basis? They need something to support that. And those capabilities were not out there until not so long ago. So I would say you need to go with that. You need to...
It's a very Zen attitude of the whole thing.
I think there's...
Zenorama.
There's also... There's an aspect of working with clients to understand, again, what's the problem you're trying to solve? We may not need to collect every data set that you could conceive of that's in the marketing ecosystem. So let's identify the ones that are going to be the most relevant and important to the problem we're trying to solve and sort of start there. And I think too often there's a trying to boil the ocean effect around I need to do measurement in marketing, so let's go and build something really big. And I think the reality that we see is the availability of data today creates this expectation that we should be able to make decisions more quickly, we should be able to do things better and more accurately. So let's go do that on this big grand scale, and that's often that's really not the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of need for incremental step change is really critical. And, you know, I think we're at the start of most of these conversations and not near the end of it, which can be a kind of dangerous perception along the way. So, you know, we've sort of touched on this in terms of actioning, but again, you know, even this conversation is a bit academic in terms of how attribution works and the importance of it. How do we make it actionable from two kind of areas? One, how do we make it actionable for sort of analytics disciplines that exist both at agencies as well as with clients, but also more importantly, since it is about kind of the future of programmatic, how do we make it actionable in terms of media buying and sort of adapting towards a much more kind of audience-centric focus like you were touching on before?
So I think two things come to mind. You know, one is if you're working, if a client has engaged in, you know, what I'll call sort of classic analytics, marketing mix, things that operate at the channel by channel level, to help them paint kind of broad strokes of, you know, which individual channels are more effective than others, at what points in time, and how efficient are they, and they can sort of use that as a framework to do allocation between channels. That's great. That operates kind of at this level. You know, digital attribution typically then has operated within the digital channel and has helped us identify which tactics within the digital mix are the most effective. The problem has been kind of the space in between, and so I think you have to do some work to actually join up what you're seeing and learning from those two approaches, arrive at a middle ground. So I think that's number one. Number two is that that process has got to be joined up with the media planning and the media trading process. And so, and that's across all the organizations that manage it. So they need to be involved in supplying data, sitting down and coming up with the questions that are going to be answered. If that doesn't exist, you know, again, it's just going to be very difficult to join up what comes out of the process to the actual execution.
Yeah, I'll do this by an example. You know, with one of our clients, this is actually one of the Group M agencies we're working with in the UK, Mediacom. And, you know, they had a client, they're using Abakus attribution, and this was one of the challenges we were giving them. You know, they were seeing their results in the user interface, and they were getting too many sort of results, in a sense. What should they do? And actually, we've now simplified it against, you know, using a marketing taxonomy. For example, we said, well, let's look at your assumptions around generic search, for example. So they thought that the generic search was very important for driving upper funnel awareness activity. And the attribution was not showing that. So we said, move some of that budget, you know, the 10% of spend that's on the lowest performing search, generic search activity, move it over to prospecting display. And here's the incremental value. And you know, the agency, when they saw that, the account managers and the planners had a real wow factor on them. You know, previously, you're looking at this maybe at a very granular level, placement level, and so on. So if you can map this, your software can map this to a level that can be translated into either manual action. All optimization is going to be at the placement or keyword level, but being able to map it to a level where the marketer can understand it and appreciate it is very significant.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's been sort of the most interesting work that we've seen, you know, with attribution providers, figuring out how do we use it both at that sort of plan level, but then also in a much more kind of automated fashion, a much more programmatic fashion. You know, it seems to me that it's going to introduce some very interesting implications for the way that we plan media and the way that we look at where we're looking to access inventory and what channels for the future. To that end, which sort of brings me to my relatively concluding point, and this one's for you, Jason. So we've seen a lot of consolidation in the market, particularly around media providers that are vertically integrating with attribution providers. So, you know, Google's bought Odometry, AOL's bought Convertro. Market share partners just recently bought Datasong, which is interesting because it's a more kind of, you know, channel level meets sort of digital level company now. And a lot of these things ultimately seem very focused on the digital only space. But, you know, as we were kind of just pointing out, digital is really only one channel. How does this really ladder up into the broader media mix, and how does this start to take into account and sort of influence what's going on at a channel level? And how do you think other channels will eventually, you know, potentially come closer to what we're doing at a much more kind of granular user level as well?
Yeah, so I think a lot in that question. Thank you for giving that to me. I think what you're seeing and we try to counsel our clients about the fact that Google might have Odometry kind of in-house and what that might mean about you know, the way that they're going to conduct that analysis. That's obviously of interest to a lot of advertisers. And I think, in a similar situation with Convertro within AOL. And I think the hard part for an advertiser is understanding that, many of those offerings will say we can do cross-channel attribution, we can go sort of across television, across multiple media. But the reality is what's becoming available now in the amount of data that's available about actual television usage and ad exposure, I think will ultimately become what people use as the sort of piece of truth to understand effectiveness of advertising in non-digital media, and there will be a much bigger opportunity to join that up to actual digital attribution-based approaches and have that be sort of one analytical approach. And the beauty of that is that if we use really granular data in the TV exercise from, say, a Rentrack or somebody like that, we have the opportunity then to do the audience construction and optimization exercise and go activate downstream with that. So I think that will become very, very compelling for clients.
I would say that we all already see clients using data from offline channels, onboarding TV data, onboarding sales from point-of-sale platforms, and overlaying that with their digital marketing platforms to really start to understand better and better the effect, the cross-channel effect, both offline and online. Obviously, a lot of those methods are really kind of basic attribution, but I think as time moves on and we have more and more data available, definitely advanced attribution will be more and more cross-channel, both digital but also offline. So.
Yeah, I would add to that once the data from offline is linkable onto online, today digital attribution is run at the cookie or the user level. But if your methodology is sound, you can probably apply this at an aggregate level. It may be a set of 30 to 50 potential users or cookies. And then that makes the offline data and offline attribution problem also lots more solvable, and also moves you up from bottom up, almost to come up into the MMM space. So you can do this analysis at an aggregate level, granular aggregate level, 30 to 50, not full populations, and that's going to be a huge enabler for MMM from the bottom-up approach.
Great. And just to close, in 30 seconds each of you, for clients who are looking to move into advanced attribution and sort of evolve what they're doing, what's your kind of first recommendation for them, moving forward?
Have a really clear understanding of exactly the problem you're trying to solve, how it's going to integrate to everything else you're doing, and be prepared to put some work and effort into making it be a success.
We say use software and unleash your inner data scientist.
I'm just trying to think if I have an inner data scientist as well. Yeah. So for me, the first and foremost would be understanding your goals. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Methodology will come next.
Thanks so much, guys. 3 men that are much smarter than me. Thank you.